If you've ever heard of haute couture or watched an haute couture runway show, you might be wondering, how is this any different from a ready-to-wear runway show? Or even from just like regular schmegular clothes? Today we're going to learn from Jessica, owner and designer at Proof, a made-to-measure brand of luxurious women's wear that she makes by herself in her gorgeous little atelier. I'll also be splicing in some clips of haute couture ateliers in Paris and couture runway shows, none of which is filmed by me, obviously, to give you a sense of the magic of couture. Jessica, owner of Proof, is a couturière. Her pieces are made to measure using hand seam finishes and the finest fabrics.
If you don't mind me asking, how much does this fabric cost per yard or whatever?
This is about $200 per yard.
Okay.
So that's the first thing to know about couture and haute couture, which are two different things. We'll discuss that in a second. Is that they're expensive. Not only because of the cost of the raw materials, but also because of the sheer amount of effort involved, which you're going to hear all about.
How is couture different from ready-to-wear?
So ready-to-wear is basically anything you see that you can just buy and you can just grab it. My ready-to-wear was a little different because it was made to measure, so it was a pre-order kind of thing. But ready-to-wear basically just means it's in a certain amount of sizes, it's graded to the brand's standard, it's ready to go, grab it, buy it, done. Couture can technically mean anything. Haute couture is a protected word in France, but couture itself basically just means dressmaking. But what it means in the context of what I'm doing is that you're doing fittings and you're creating one-of-one pieces for clientele. And there's a lot of meticulous hand sewing, there's a lot of meticulous parts of constructing the garment that would be considered more of couture techniques.
She was not kidding when she said it's meticulous, by the way. When I filmed this video in her studio, she spent about half an hour print matching and cutting the tweed for just the front panels alone of one single dress.
So what I do is I start with the front panel. That's what's going to determine how everything gets set up. I'm going to find the blue, and I have the middle line marked out of the garment so I can make sure everything is balanced. I pin a lot because I'm not the most talented cutter in the world.
Hey, me neither.
So.
Even if I pin a lot, I'm like, how did it still move?
Right, yeah. So for these pieces, I'll now unpin. What I will do is, where's my next pattern? Take my next pattern piece. Basically, I'll match it. And then it's pretty simple. This is the seam allowance here. I'll pull back that. So I just want to make sure it's like match. Yep, there we go. As you can see.
So she repeated that for about 15 to 20 more minutes, and the end result is that when she sews it together, it looks like the dress is made out of one piece of fabric and you can barely even see the seams. Chanel is obviously very well known for their tweeds, and of course they print match too. They obviously do this in their haute couture, but they also do it in their ready-to-wear, as I showed in my Shein versus Chanel video. This brings me to an important point. Some labor-intensive and time-intensive techniques that are common in haute couture can also be used in luxury ready-to-wear. However, there are still some key differences between ready-to-wear and couture.
Ready-to-wear uses industrial techniques as well. They use long stitch lengths and they do everything assembly line style. So one person will be installing zippers 10 hours a day, hopefully less if it's being ethically produced. So yeah, ready-to-wear and couture. Ready-to-wear, you're not going to see the hand seaming details. You're not going to see like a bagged out lining, for instance. Because to do a bagged out lining, you have to hand stitch it closed.
Right.
And that takes time, that takes money. And then things like the hand sewn hook and eyes, you're just not really going to see that in ready to wear because again, you can't do that by machine.
Fittings and having things be made to measure is obviously another crucial aspect that differentiates haute couture from ready to wear.
So if I recall correctly, you used to do primarily ready-to-wear, but you've transitioned to mostly doing couture pieces now. So could you tell me why you made that switch?
When I first started, and actually like going back to when I was like 10 years old, I always looked up to fashion as fashion houses. And that was something that I grew up reading about and understanding was like Savile Row, Saint Laurent, how they had a one-on-one connection with their clients and these pieces were made bespoke to their clients. And so that was always kind of in the back of my mind as I was building. The ready-to-wear was a really good introduction into learning how to fit because I did made to measure while having it more ready-to-wear. So it was a really good introduction in learning how to fit all different body types, but these pieces were a lot simpler to not only construct, but fit. And then I kind of felt like I had reached a plateau in what I was able to do without incorporating fittings into the brand. I knew that I wouldn't be able to create the pieces that I wanted to create without having fittings because they're so fundamental to crafting the perfect garment, especially the pieces I make now. They're extremely tight, meticulous, everything has to be in the right place and everything needs to be balanced perfectly.
So doing fittings and having the garment be made bespoke to the wearer really are quintessential parts of couture and haute couture in particular. This can sometimes be obvious when you watch runway shows. Ready-to-wear shows are liable to have more fit issues than haute couture. This is an example from the Carolina Herrera Spring/Summer 25 show. It's ready-to-wear, and you can see that this blazer really does not fit perfectly. It looks like it's supposed to be fitted at the waist, but it's too big, and something is clearly wrong with the sleeve. In contrast, this is from Schiaparelli's Spring/Summer 25 haute couture show, and the fit is pretty impeccable. That's not to say that the fit of haute couture garments is always impeccable. In fact, sometimes designers will make things fit not quite perfectly on purpose. For example, these Schiaparelli dresses that sit away from the chest and don't cup the bust perfectly. That normally would be considered bad fit, but in this case it's pretty clearly intentional. Sometimes celebrities will also wear couture samples or pieces from the archive that don't fit them perfectly, like Taylor Russell in this 1993 Spring/Summer couture gown by Chanel. As you can see, it doesn't fit her as perfectly as it did the runway model. That's normal, it's an archival piece, it wasn't made for her. But I still think she looks gorgeous. That said, haute couture is generally expected to fit perfectly, and if it doesn't, there can be hell to pay. Like, for instance, some recent Fendi haute couture collections that were, like, maybe not super great. And finally, couture and haute couture are known for their exquisite and labor-intensive construction. My hardcore fashion and sewing nerds are really going to appreciate this part because we are going to look at the inner construction of one of Jessica's beautiful dresses.
So I bailed on this. I had a photo shoot last weekend.
Okay.
And I was making this, and I just bailed on it because I just wasn't convinced.
Okay.
So this one has the pleated bust darts as well. It's
Yeah.
very vintage.
Yeah, totally. It's
You know.
very nice.
Yeah, just wasn't convinced on the white.
Okay.
And also was running into some issues, so I took it as a sign to move on. So
Ooh, the inside.
usually there's so much more work that goes into the inside. Like this would be stay stitched. This is the boning tape I usually use.
Okay.
It's really thick. And then I noticed that the white was showing through on certain seams.
Oh, I see.
And so then I was like, okay,
yeah.
let me just see if I were to get a nude bias tape,
Yeah.
a nude boning casing, if that would work. So I had
Yeah.
this nude bias tape.
Okay.
So that's why there's bias tape in there. I wouldn't usually use that for boning casing. But you can see I keep it separate. So most corsets,
Okay.
you would either like roll pin this or they use fusible interfacing.
Yeah.
I didn't want fusible interfacing anywhere near the silk
Yeah. Fair enough.
or wool or anywhere. So it took me a long time to figure out how I was going to build an invisible corset. If I were to have these two pieces together,
Yeah.
as acting as one to give it that stability and strength, then I wouldn't be able to build this corset invisibly. You would
I
have
see.
stitching lines on the outside.
Okay.
And I didn't want any stitching lines on the outside.
Yeah.
I wanted it to be completely flush. So I had to figure out how to interline it, which includes like a lot of roll pinning. And anyway, so these pieces are completely separate.
Gotcha.
And so the only
So
place I
much
use
detail.
interfacing would be just where I need a bit of support on the lining.
Okay. Beautiful.
Okay.
Thank you.
If you want to learn more about haute couture, I would highly recommend checking out this video by Loïc Prigent about the Chanel Haute Couture ateliers. I have linked it in the description. He actually went there and filmed, so you'll want to check that one out if you're an haute couture nerd like me. Thanks so much to Jessica for letting me film at your studio. Thank you to you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.